Sports Talker Nation, welcome back once again to our 2016 MLB preview. Today we're going to start our discussion of the NL Central. As always, I am your host, the G-Man, and we're going to talk about everyone's favorite, the lovable losers, although maybe not so much anymore, the Chicago Cubs. The Cubs took the world by storm last year, and with good reason. They're young. They're exciting. They have a goofy manager who I don't really care for. I think he tries to make himself the show a little bit too much, but he's very effective. He won in Tampa Bay. Last year he obviously won in Chicago. Chicago is everyone's flavor of the month, and everyone thinks the team to beat. And I have to admit that I'm kind of on the bandwagon. Not only do I think they're going to win, I'm rooting for them to win. I think they and the Mets will both be challenging. Mets for pitching, Cubs more for their young offensive studs. But I think they have a great chance to actually capitalize and make a big difference this year. So let's start at the top. Batting leadoff, they should have Dexter Fowler. Dexter Fowler shocked the world by turning down 3 years and $30+ million to return to the Cubs. Now, granted, he had an excellent year last year, although his on-base percentage was much lower. I think his thoughts are, I'll go back, I'll go to a winner, and I'll wind up putting myself back in the marketplace the following year, since he didn't get the offers that he thought he deserved. So he'll bat leadoff and play center field. That moves their other big free agent acquisition, Jason Heyward, who they had slated to play center field, over to right. Jason Heyward is a guy who has always left me wanting more. He's so big, he's fast, he has a quick bat. You'd think 25 home runs has to be in there somewhere, and he just doesn't produce home runs. He's a good hitter. He's a very good fielder. He's a good base runner. Now, is that worth $125 million? I don't think so, but it's not my money. So as a number 2 hitter in that lineup, I think he's a wonderful fit. Anthony Rizzo bats third. Anthony Rizzo is an absolute stud. He proved it last year. Great first baseman. Developed a little bit of a better eye. Tremendous power, and he's a MVP candidate in my opinion. He's a hell of a player. I think they're going to do well. Chris Bryant, last year's everybody rookie that everybody loved, and let me tell you, there was good reason why. He was fantastic. Every time he came up, he's one of those guys that I thought if he made contact, he was going to hit a home run. As a Phillies fan, every time I watched him swing, I thought he was going to hit a home run. Is there the chance for the sophomore jinx? Of course there is, but he is so talented and comes with such a pedigree that I don't see that happening. I'm going to say Kyle Schwarber bats fifth. He's a bit of a conundrum because now, with the re-signing of Fowler, there's not a position in the outfield for him to play. They're so crowded in the outfield. I think they're going to let him split time between catcher and the outfield and try to get him 500 at-bats, and they should because his bat is electric. He has that light tower power that when he connects, the ball goes a long, long way. He's a pretty good athlete, so I know he struggled last year in left field, but I think long-term he can handle it. I just don't think right now with Fowler and Heyward and Jorge Soler, who's going to bat after him in this order, playing right field consistent or left field consistently, I just don't think there's everyday time out there. Obviously, all this stuff generally works itself out with injuries and challenges and guys having down years. So I think they will find a way to rotate 4 guys to get about 500 at-bats each. And if they do, Schwarber's good for 30 home runs. I don't think he's a great defensive catcher. I think you live for it with what he brings to the plate offensively, though. I mentioned Jorge Soler. Soler had a wonderful postseason last year. He's another guy that has always seemed to leave you wanting a little bit more. His power is insane. He came over from Cuba with a huge pedigree, but 260 and 17 home runs is not going to do it. I see the guy hit 280 with 25 home runs and 10 stolen bases, good base runner, but he has to do it, right? Right now it's just he should be able to do it. He has to be able to do it. They signed Ben Zobrist. Ben Zobrist is a guy who I've never understood. Everyone always makes him out to be so great because of versatility, and from a true baseball perspective, makes total sense. I have all these guys in fantasy leagues who overpay for this guy because he can play multiple positions. So what? Multiple positions is not great. What you get in Zobrist is a versatile guy who you can get plenty of at-bats because he can wind up all over the field. Although for the Cubs, he's going to wind up a starter at second, I think. He's a guy who can hit you maybe 260 with 12 to 15 home runs. 15 is a stretch at this point. He used to be good for 15 stolen bases. He's probably good for 5 to 10 now. He's a good base runner. He'll do the right thing. You could even bat him second if you have to drop Heyward down if there's injuries in the lineup. But he's a good everyday workaday player. I think he'll be very good for that team. But let's not go crazy about who and what Ben Zobrist is. Addison Russell will probably bat eighth. They seem to love Russell. I'm not sold on him yet. He is the least of their prospects as far as I'm concerned. They consider him kind of the jewel of their farm system. I think he'll be okay defensively. I think he'll be okay offensively. I think he's good for 15 home runs and a 250 average. I guess that's pretty good from a middle infielder and certainly down at the bottom of your lineup. But he does strike out quite a bit, so you worry he's not going to be able to turn that lineup over. On the bench, they do have Javier Baez. This guy may have more natural power than even Schwarber, but he strikes out at an alarming rate. He looks like every time he's up to bat, it's either going to be a home run or a strikeout. He's like Rob Deere and Dave Kingman had a kid, it would be Javier Baez. So hopefully he turns around. If he hits 250, he's a superstar because he'll hit 40 home runs. I don't know that he can get there. He can play all over the place. They're actually letting him play a little bit in the outfield as well to get him more at bats. Miguel Montero is the guy who would have been the starter at catcher had Schwarber not had to move there. I think he'll get 300 at bats. He's a very good defensive catcher. He's an okay offensive player. I think he's good for the team. Their rotation is much improved. I'm not a huge believer in Jake Arrieta, but he proved over and over again last year how good he really was. Now, whether he's that good again, I don't know, but he's still, even if he's 80% of that, he's still a number one in this league. He's your number one. John Lester signs on last year to be the number one. Doesn't have to be the number one because of Arrieta's ascension. Lester will do well in the number two role there. John Lackey took less money to move away from the Cardinals and move over to the Cubs. I think he was pissed off that he didn't get the big contract offer and they let him play for the minimum. And didn't try to extend him. So I think he's going to try to stick to him every chance he can. Numbers 4 and 5 I don't love. They have Kyle Hendricks and Jason Hamill. I think they're definitely bottom of the rotation fodder. A guy like Trevor Cahill or even Adam Warren may step into one of those slots. Cahill's been hurt quite a bit. But, those guys don't need to be great with that offense. They just need to hold the fort down, and I think they'll be able to do that. Their closer was an unknown last year in Hector Rondon. Young kid who stepped up and got 35 saves with no problem. He throws very hard. I think he has some control problems, and they don't have much to back him up. I guess Pedro Strop would be the next in line. He's also a decent setup man. But again, with that starting lineup, the top three in that rotation, the bullpen doesn't have to be lights out. It just has to be good. I think, with that said, I think the Cubs go for about 93 wins this year, and they challenge for a World Series title. If they get to the postseason, I sure as hell will be rooting for them over the Mets. That's about all I have to say. This is the G-Man. That's your 2016 Chicago Cubs preview, and I am out.